Talking about absolute living legends, Walter, do you want to take the stage? You're next.
But you know, now that, I mean, is there anybody...
Walter, go and have it.
Billy's here, and if you want to have anybody else have a chance to speak, they should...
Walter, go on the stage, it's your turn. Get on the stage, it's your turn, man. You can go on the stage, it's your turn. Get on the stage, Walter.
More important, face knuckles.
Found faith.
Oh, thank you. Neil, that's very kind. Thank you. Thank you. Walter, take a seat.
Okay,
Please do.
I've taken my seat.
Okay, okay. Now, Walter, I understand that in the 1970s you were involved in various businesses, and then in the early 80s you discovered this thing called video games. Perhaps you could tell me, was there a moment when you realised that these video games that were taking over the nation could be perhaps a business opportunity for your good self?
Well, I was living in Houston. I was an oil broker. That was going nowhere. So I decided that...
There is no future in oil, you're right.
Well, there was a lot of future, but not for me in my individual, the office that I was working selling was called Six Oil, the heavy oil that's burned in like the big furnaces of like a major installation, a big building. So I started working on creating a who's who in the petroleum industry. It was called Days, Who's Who in the Petroleum Industry. And my co-worker one night said, well, I can't do this anymore. I got to go play Space Invaders. And I never had heard of Space Invaders before that moment. I said, what? So he took me to a big arcade that was there in the big highway belt around Houston. And I walked in the door, and the first thing I saw were like 8 Berserk machines in a row shouting, kill the humanoid. And so, and he took me to a Space Invaders machine, and I started playing it, and I was hooked. And I fell in love with Space Invaders, and I started doing it almost, many times per week. Then Pac-Man and Centipede, and before you knew it, I was completely embroiled in the video game culture. But I went on the road as a seller of old historic newspapers, as selling them to history teachers and as interior decor for restaurants. And while on the road, I would stop at every arcade I could. And that's where I began to develop the realization that high-level video game playing, actually it is intriguing to me. Excellence in action, as portrayed in competitive video game playing. So I started becoming intrigued by people getting high scores. I started writing high scores down wherever I went. Following that, here's the highest score I ever saw in Tempest, here's the highest score I ever saw in any other game. And so I began developing a backlog of information on high scoring on video games, notes, scraps of notes, as I went around to like 100 arcades in the summer of 1981. I became in love with video game playing so much that I opened up Twin Galaxies, my arcade, as an excuse to play more and more video games.
I want to come on to the Twin Galaxies arcade because, as far as I know, that ran from 81 to I think about 1984, and we can often get an impression that it was all glamorous events with people like Billy and Todd and people coming along to the arcades. But of course, it was a business. So was it all glamorous, or did you spend much of your time, cleaning up the cigarette butts from the Berserk machine?
Oh, I had to babysit the players a lot. Okay, I had to take care of it a lot. I had to do, nuts and bolts, normal, everyday business to keep the thing going as well as I could. But there was this dynamic thing that was happening that was larger than life. And here's an example. On November 21st, in a matter of 3 days or something like that, it'll be the 35th anniversary of in other words, November 21st, 1982, 35 years ago, coming in a few days, the Philadelphia Sunday Inquirer published a front page headline story of the headline said, of a video game mecca and the Maharishi effect. But what the story was all about was that the Philadelphia Inquirer editor-in-chief sent a reporter all the way to Ottumwa to find out why Ottumwa, Iowa was recognized as the crossroads of the video game world. And to me, that huge spiritual phenomena was really the bigger story of what was really happening in Ottumwa. The global video game industry was finding a mecca, was finding a crossroads, And who knows how that could really happen, because it was so amazing that it happened, but it turned out that it was Ottumwa that was going to be the birthplace of organized competitive
Well,
esports.
you're clearly very proud of the significant thing that you and lots of people have made to make video games what they are today. I've got a picture here of you showing off a fistful of cards. Perhaps you could tell us about your motivation for the Walter Day trading cards.
Well, I love the trading cards. For some reason, I've always had a thing with printing, like I've had a thing with printing of business cards, trading cards, old newspapers, high school yearbooks. So I have printing in my DNA. In fact, one of my great uncles was the founder of the New York Sun, and another one was the writer of Clarence Day was the writer of Cheaper by the Dozen. I don't know if you're familiar with that story from the 1890s. But essentially, the cards for me are an attempt to commemorate the amazing historical processes that have happened in the video game realm, because this culture is monumental. It's bigger than music, movies, and sports now, the video game phenomena with esports and everything. And so these cards are attempting to commemorate that huge sweep of history with all the people, all the events, all the people who contributed on some level, either small or very big, to make this culture grow to what it has become now. So it's a really a major phenomenon. And these cards all together, and there's 1,700 different cards made so far, they form a tapestry. And tapestries create pictures that are made up of individual threads. Each person's an individual thread, and the big picture is the story of how this all happened and why it all happened.
Thank you, Walter. How poetically put. Now, I know actually at the end of this session we will actually be presenting some new cards as well, so that's a nice thing. But just before I leave you and move on to Mr. Bill Mitchell, is that you are famous for video games, but you also apparently know how to play guitar and sing. I
Ever
just
since-
want to know, do you ever look back and think video games has really got in the way of my music career?
Well, the thing is I've let a lot of things get in the way. I've let video games get in the way of a lot of different things I feel the need to do. Everybody has this concept of a bucket list. For me, the last big thing that I have to do, other than becoming divinely enlightened, I'm writing a musical. I'm actually writing a musical. The music is done. I'm writing what's called the book, the story of the musical. It's called the libretto. And when that's finished, then I can finish the lyrics and the musical will be done. It's going to happen because I feel it so strong in there. That's the last main thing I need to do, writing a musical. And it's very challenging. I think it's more difficult than the amount of intelligence I have. But in one of those, is that time? My time?
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. Your time on Broadway will come, but
Okay.
for now, Walter Day, the founder of Twin Galaxies, music, the Andrew Lloyd Webber of the future, Mr. Walter Day. And now on to Mr. Bill Mitchell.